Good morning, Africa. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Akwa Ibom State. It's a beautiful Wednesday morning, midweek, of course, and August is already going. Today is the second, and the NLC had said Nigerians will be coming together to hit the streets and to peacefully protest the things happening in the country. We don't know if that's going to hold, but of course, this is Rise and Shine, and my name is Uyaya Nek, and of course, Rise and Shine is coming to you on the platform of Spectrum Television, and we are live in Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. Thank you for joining us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Africa. My name is Francis Oyima, and glad to welcome you to Wednesday edition of Rise and Shine. Of course, like we has said, today the anxiety is palpable, felt in the atmosphere. Nigerians gearing up to take to the streets across the different states of the Federation to protest the fuel subsidy removal, and of course, his attendant sufferings on the streets of the country. Yesterday, we had conversations with the NLC chairman in Akwa Ibom State, Comrade Sunny James, who, of course, told us that regardless of what the federal government is trying to peddle, the NLC, other trade union organizations, and the Nigerian people are going out. And he gave the clarification that it's not about striking, it's a peaceful protest to drive home the point that Nigerians are suffering, Nigerians are hungry, Nigerians are tired of this President Ahmed Bola Tinubu's led administration and their inability to immediately address, the effect of the fuel subsidy removal. And there have been, going back and forth, like we already know, between the federal government and the NLC and trade union organizations. But this time, it's not just about the trade unions, it's not just about the NLC, it's about Nigerians taking to the street. And we've seen pockets of those protests, began within the course of the week. And today, regardless of what might happen, I think Nigerians are going to head out to the street. I know that this morning, yesterday, we saw the acting Inspector General of Police, Egbetekun, admitting to the fact that, yes, it is within the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for Nigerians to go out and protest peacefully. But then he also stressed that, the organizers, the NLC, TUC, and other persons who will be partaking should ensure that the protest does not get hijacked. Now, it is also within the purview of the Nigerian police force to ensure that when Nigerians go out to protest, it is peaceful. And so they are supposed to provide the necessary security. So Nigerians are expecting that beside the talks, the acting Inspector General of Police should have directed his men to be on the alert and, of course, ensure that no criminal element goes out across the respective state to hijack the peaceful protest. And then, of course, that would give the excuse of bringing down the federal might of the armed forces on Nigerians, which will not speak well for this administration.
Well, as expected, the NLC had given about a week notice of today's protest, so it's expected that the Nigeria Police Force, and I'm sure that NLC, being a very organized system, at least would have sent a notification to the Nigeria Police Force. So it's expected that across the 36 states of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, because this is not just about the NLC, it's about Nigerians, we expect that policemen have been dispatched to city centers just to be able to maintain law and order during this peaceful walk, and of course carrying placards and pushing the concerns of Nigerians forward. But yes, of course, it's Rise and Shine, and let's talk Nigeria. Yesterday was Tuesday, and certain things happened in the country. On a very sad note this morning, as part of our flash news, we see the fact that a certain chopper crashed into a residential area yesterday in Lagos State, and so far this morning we have seen that 4 people were rescued from that particular experience, and thankfully there was no life lost yet. 4 people were rescued. So far so good, but this is we are wondering what exactly is going on at this time. Does this spell any kinds of impending doomsday in the aviation sector? Because I don't know if you've kept your ears to the ground. In recent weeks, there's been people talking about the fact that oftentimes there's turbulence in the air and everything like that whilst they are traveling. So we are asking the big question of are vehicles, are these planes maintained while they get on air, and this particular chopper that crashed, on what premise did that happen, and the rest of the things. But this was a major concern, especially because it hit a residential area and got gutted by fire almost immediately.
Well, the helicopter was currently being, as at the time of that being involved in the accident, was being used for a test, a test flight. And of course, there are concerns that Nigerians would be asking at this point before taking the helicopter for the testing, were they checks in the working and the mechanic system of the helicopter? If there was, what was the diagnosis put forward by the engineers? Was this chopper maintained as it should be? Was it in the right state of being? Was it airworthy, as the case may be? Those are the questions Nigerians are asking. And if it wasn't, why was it taken out for a test? And if the test, of course, agency, that's the agency spokesperson, Modu Shakiru, said that the different persons who were involved in the chopper had different varying injuries, and of course some of them have been taken to the hospital. But the beautiful thing is that we're beginning to see the Nigerian what was it called again this time, the Nigerian emergency team, medical emergency team, the different Red Cross organization and all of those swung into action immediately and were able to arrive at the scene on time to help save the people who were involved. We had the Lagos State Fire and Rescue Service confirm the incident, and of course spoke about the injuries of the people involved, spoke about how much motorists also gave their contributions to salvaging the situation. And now this goes to the fact that, in situations where we have Nigerians actually growing a heart, in situations where we have people being proactive enough to know that, okay, the first thing that should happen when there is an accident is actually to find a way to provide solutions and take the people involved to the nearest medical facilities for medical treatment, we could actually be able to save lots of lives. But this is yet another indication that the Nigerian aviation industry, the aviation sector, the aviation ministry needs to do a whole lot of checks and balances across the countries, across the respective state, to ensure that people don't just buy aircraft, people don't just own aircraft, organizations don't just get to own aircraft, but that maintenance and due diligence is done on these aircraft so that we don't get to see these kinds of accidents happening.
Of course, the air control tower had said that the aircraft operated by Air First Hospital and Tour crashed from 1,500 feet after leaving the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, MMIA. Of course, we also saw that the aircraft was coming in for an emergency landing but hit the light pole after making the circuit. Of course, the aircraft had 5 hours field endurance, as reports are given. We also see here that the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, NCCA, stated that they were not well informed of the details of what happened with that particular aircraft. But of course, as expected, there's going to be more investigation done with regards to that particular chopper. But thankfully, one of the things that we are most grateful for is the fact that we did not see a lot of lives. We didn't see lives lost, because when you say a chopper crashed into a residential area, that can mean a myriad of things. But it was good to see that somehow people were able to scamper for to security and all of that. It didn't quite crash into a very busy facility or something like that. So we are thankful for that particular issue this morning. But as expected, investigations must be carried out to ensure that we do not see a repeat of this. And when we consistently hear about airplanes having to forcibly land somewhere because of one technical glitch or the other in the air, then we need to certify that these planes, these choppers are airworthy before they are released to take flights, just so that we can maintain lives and property of individuals taking this mode of transportation at this time. But of course, we lay that particular story to rest this morning. Let's look at the fact that the Senate President has lamented over the low earning of House members in the front of, in the face of the NLC protest. I don't know how many of us have interacted with this particular response or speech or phrase by the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio. How at this time is the Senate President even in the least way, even if it was meant to be a salient joke, how can you be decrying the low earning of lawmakers in the country right now, as opposed to what Nigerians are experiencing nationwide? People who are earning in millions put together an annual earning, some of them earning billions in a year out of taxpayers' money in this country. Yet, as Nigerians are saying they want to go to the street to protest today because of the things they're experiencing. Yesterday, whilst deliberations were being made over the NLC protest, the Senate President lamented that lawmakers are earning low in the country. Francis, I don't know whether we are talking about the same Nigeria or we should visit another place.
Well, the politicians never cease to amaze us. They never cease to, cook up something that would spiral out and, of course, bring out a lot of reactions from Nigerians. Now, the last time I checked by the 9th Assembly, I know that an average of 23 millionaire thereabout within that range is taken home by each senator on a monthly basis. That is beside the perks of the office. That's beside maybe the contracts that they get through their companies. That's beside other things that comes to them as a result of the office they occupy. So average of 23 million in a month, if you multiply that by, the number of months,
yes,
you know what it means. And then, of course, that's aside the other
benefits of plenary sittings.
Yeah, that comes with it. So if people who are earning about 23 million plus or above that are coming out to tell Nigerians their earning is not enough, I'm wondering, what is a Nigerian who is earning 20,000 naira a month going to say? What is a Nigerian who is earning 50,000 naira a month going to say? How does a Nigerian who earns maybe 15,000 naira a month feel at this point, knowing that I'm earning 15,000? I'm not complaining, or I might be complaining, but I'm trying to survive. And somebody's earning 23 million plus on a monthly basis beside other things. And this person is saying, I'm not earning enough, and still trying to find ways to bring in more. I mean, this is the height of insensitivity on the part of the National Assembly. Is the height of, I wouldn't call it callousness or carelessness. I would say probably the Senate is trying to, whip up sentiments and also tell Nigerians, look, you guys are protesting, you want to protest, but we too, we are not, well taken care of. So while you're protesting, maybe we should also consider, upgrading our salary structure. I mean, if this is anything, it's drawing Nigerians' mind to the statement that once surfaced that, the federal government is mulling increment in the National Assembly, political office holders, judicial officers, their salaries and all of that. And of course, we saw the presidency coming out to say, no, this is not happening. And when that does happen, Nigerians would be in the know. So this might mean that there is something, going on the need that Nigerians are yet to be aware of. And if that should happen, considering what is happening in Nigeria, I think it is not just going to be one day protest, it's not just going to be maybe a few days protest. It might be a long-lasting protest that will ground activities in this country. But it's about time the National Assembly and our leaders get to know that, I mean, what you have is more than enough. It's about time for you to look at the part of sacrificing. If anything, the National Assembly should at this point be considering cutting cost of governance. They should consider cutting their own salaries and, of course, rechannel those salaries to dealing with different problems for Nigerians to have a better life. That should be the renewed hope of Ahmed Bola Tinubu, if indeed is serious about changing Nigeria.
Well, just to give some more ground perspective to explain what exactly the Senate President was saying. Of course, Godswill Akpabio has said earnings of members of the National Assembly are insufficient to take care of volumes of requests from their constituencies. Now, the Senate President made the remark while contributing to debate on a motion sponsored by Abdurrahman Kawu Suleiman, NNPP Kano, on the need to avert impending strike by the Nigerian Labour Congress (NLC). Now, he said although hardship associated with removal of subsidy on petroleum products is much, that Nigerians need to be more patient with the government even as it devises steps to ameliorate their suffering. Now, Kawu, in defense of his motion, drew the attention of the Senate to the fact that the strike would cripple the country. Now, movements will be severely curtailed. Commercial transport operators would withdraw their services, while markets, schools, and healthcare facilities would be forced to shut down. Now, of course, he was also warning that the action could heat up the polity and gains from the strike could be far below cost to parties in conflict. Now, of course, he also stated that the strike threat by the NLC, if not averted, could plunge Nigeria into deeper economic woes. Of course, this was what Kawu brought on the floor of the plenary yesterday. And in just a way to respond to all of that, that is when we got the Senate President giving the remark that the salaries and earnings of members of the House are not even sufficient to handle the requests, the needs of the constituencies. Now, that brings me to a very big question. When you say that the National Assembly earnings are insufficient to take care of volumes of requests from their constituencies, are you suggesting that elected officers into the National Assemblies use their salaries to cater for the needs of their constituencies? Is it that when you are paid 23 million naira in a month or more, you are expected to take out of that and get things done in your constituency? If that is the valid argument, and we see that that is what you're doing, then maybe this could be a valid argument. But since we know that that is very, very untrue, we do not understand the premise upon which the Senate President will say that the earnings of House members are insufficient to handle the requests that come, from, their various constituencies. If you're talking about the freebies that you like to hand down as an individual when you visit your constituencies, that is within your own prerogative. You can't come and put it on, as a burden to the treasury of the country to make us pay you more. For what exactly? I know that when you work in different environments, usually work roles are evaluated before salaries are increased and all of that. If we really, really want to look through what the members of House do, what exactly do they do? Sit down and deliberate on policies and issues affecting the country, and in a month you earn 23 million. How many days in a month do you sit at plenary to earn that much, apart from other benefits? So it is consistently insensitive for us to keep hearing our leaders come out to even have the impetus to say this in the face of the reality of things that Nigerians are even facing. Like, you rightly said, what we should be considering now in the National Assembly is actually a downward review of salaries earned by public office holders or even politicians in this country. How can you, in the face of protests because of how high the cost of living has become, fuel and all of that, you're saying even you're suffering? It takes my mind back to the joke that was done by the Senate President, I think that was last week, where they were raising emotion and trying to, end plenary. And we are also hearing the joke of let the poor breathe. We are asking what exactly is happening in this country. Is Nigeria now a joke to the people that were elected into offices to mind our systems and help us, get things done? And I will always draw back to Nigerians being the ones who are at fault, because every 4 years, these men are going to come to your local government, they are going to come to your constituencies, and out of the 23 million naira that they've already earned, buy a few bags of rice, get some salt, and get some spaghetti, and come and share. And you re-elect these people that are not touched by the things that are going on in Nigeria to go back and earn more and not impact society. I know that in the last cycle of election, what we clamored the most was the fact that, oh, Nigerians have now woken up, Nigerians are now civilly aware, Nigerians are now ready to do differently. But it looks like we didn't quite get it right this time again, because some of the things we are hearing out of the 10th now is already laughable, and this is just the beginning of the administration. How much more do we need to condone? We do hope that, you know, the requisite authorities will make sure that we do not even hear as Nigerians this issue of salary increments, you know, by the House. Because first of all, the NLC TUC have been trying to push the conversation for minimum wage and salaries to be improved. Yesterday, remember that the NLC, you know, chairman in Akwabu said that we spoke to had said constitutionally minimum wage cannot be increased until 2024. That is when we can even constitutionally have that conversation. And now they're saying we are even asking for, you know, salary wages, things for people to just use and go by in this season. And if we cannot do that for the people who are the productive end of the country, why are we still having this conversation about increasing pay for lawmakers?
Well, first, the one thing that the National Assembly did get right is that in the event that there is a nationwide protest, which of course is happening today, and then it's prolonged, it speaks about a bad image for this present administration. Of course, it's going to ground activities. Of course, it's going to, you know, cost the government money. Of course, it's going to paint the wrongest picture as far as Ahmed Bola Tinubu's administration is concerned. The 10th National Assembly is also concerned. But it's laughable that the National Assembly is sitting down and, you know, spewing out statements that will further get Nigerians very angry with the National Assembly and its leaders. Yesterday, we know that the meeting between the NLC, TUC, and the federal government again ended in gridlock without any concrete arrangement, without any agreement being reached. And that was not fault on or part of the fault of the NLC or the TUC, but rather of the federal government. Remember, on several occasions, the leadership of the NLC and TUC have been up and ready to meet with the government, but then they have been shown empty space and empty tables to negotiate with. And of course, that goes to show that probably the administration of Ahmed Bola Tinubu is not really listening to the plights of Nigerians, because if they did, then negotiating with the NLC, negotiating with Nigerians, and of course putting forward their best foot in terms of the immediate palliative to cushion the effect of fuel subsidy should have been ruled out as at this point. Now, recall the conversation we also had yesterday. One of the resource persons did say, if the government of Nigeria was ready for this time, if Ahmed Bola Tinubu was prepared as he has told Nigerians, then it would have just been a matter of picking from the template and implementing, not waiting for 2 months without finding any headway. First, it was the laughable paltry sum of 8,000 naira to 12 million households, and then you're looking at households, 12 million. How many persons make up a household? Let's say one household has 2 people, the other 3, the other 5, the other 10.
An average Nigerian home has between 4 to 6 dependents.
So you're looking at 8,000 naira to 10 people, 8,000 naira to 6 people, 8,000 naira to 5 people. How is that going to work out?
They said it will grossly now affect 60
and then
million
now exactly. So you're not even being able to cater for the 12 million households or thereabout that you've said. You're now saying 60 million will also benefit as the ripple effect of that. It was just laughable. And at this point in time, I think Nigerians are the ones doing themselves. I would say Nigerians are the ones shooting themselves in the foot, because even the people within the ranks and file of the security agencies are all Nigerians. And if they don't get to understand that whatever is biting on the average masses is biting on everybody, then there's a problem. But then there are indications and comments on the social media of what is happening in Niger Republic, what has happened in Mali, and of course the fact that that might just happen in Nigeria if we do not get to address this issue. Now, many have said it might not come from the military, because of course we saw the transformation that happened within the ranks and files of the Nigerian armed forces shortly after Ahmed Bola Tinubu came into power. In as much as some Nigerians are saying, I think it's about time for us to have military coups, we would also say military coups are not the way to go. Now, violence has never been the solution out of any problem. If you're talking military coup, then you're taking Nigeria back to 100 years back, which of course nobody's going to look for that now. But beyond the military coups, the best solution has always been dialogue. So it's about time the federal government understand that, yes, the Nigerian people are always ready to dialogue. But at this point in time, Nigerians are not going to swallow hook, line, and sinker anymore. Whatever palliative measures, whatever terms, whatever propositions the federal government is putting forward for Nigerians. Nigerians want to see beyond the talks, beyond the proposition, beyond the lofty ideas, strategic plans that is defined by time, with implementation steps being rooted out. Absolutely. So Nigerians will know, okay, this is what the federal government is saying. Between August, September, this is what is going to be done. This is how we intend to do it. This is the fund that has been set aside to do it. These are the people responsible for it. And we are going to take the Nigerian people through it step by step through the media. When that happens, then the Nigerian people will know that, okay, there is a difference in the body language of the federal government. There is the possibility that this is going to happen. And Nigerians can have a lot more confidence in the Ahmed Bola Tinubu's administration. And of course, with that coming into existence, by the time, let's say, the first step, the first rolled out propositions are met to maybe 50%, 60, 70%, Nigerians will calm down and relax. So at this point, like the NLC chairman in Akwa Ibom State did say, Nigerians are not going to fight. Nigerians are simply coming out to peacefully tell the government, we are hungry, we are tired, we no longer want business as usual, we want solutions that will solve our immediate problems. Yes, you've rolled out the long-term goals, the long-term plan, the long-term palliative measures, but are we going to be here, alive and healthy, to see those long-term goals? If you do not provide the immediate ones, the answer, of course, is no. And let's not forget, with the strike from the medical sector already ongoing, the hospitals shut down, there are chances that people are going to drop down in their numbers without medical attention. So it's time to act, not to speak.
It's time to act and not to speak. We fully agree with you. And then when we also see a time where we are having more committees, as was with the former administration, we see a lot of committees being set up to handle issues, but at the end of the day, these committees are not even sitting. They are not investigating the reason for why they were instituted or even having these negotiations. And we are wondering, are we about to also experience fresh bout of Mr. President said, but we never really see what Mr. President did? Nigerians are really hoping that this mantra of renewed hope will be a real experience for Nigerians. Not that the president, yes, will come out and give a speech and address Nigerians, but yet everything is basically on promissory notes. Nigerians are asking to see dividends of all of these promises now, because the issues are biting on Nigerians now. Please, let's stop having the conversation of making the rich get richer in this country, and let's try to alleviate and take out of, the very gross poverty line of about 150 million people. Let's try to get these people out of these lines already in this country. But let's move ahead. Still talking about structure in Nigeria and how things really are. There is a new epidemic that is biting into the fabrics of productivity, and we've continued to hear that it's either the graduates that are being churned out of Nigerian universities are not employable, because we can lean back on the fact that we have debilitating education sector. A lot of things are working against the quality of education that we have in the country. But then again, we also saw the Director General of the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, Adewale Oyerinde, say that the depleting number of industries in the country are unable to employ the high turnout of graduates churned out annually. Now, he also said the unstable educational system caused by threats of strike and other challenges negates the ability to produce graduates who are employable and competitive within the context of the global market. We also see NECA saying that the remark, of course, this remark was given at the International Schools and Conference of the African Center for Career Enhancement and Skills Support, held at the National Universities Commission headquarters in Abuja. Of course, we are looking at partnership between 6 African universities and Leipzig University in Germany, organizing this to enhance the level of employability of university graduates and to investigate the stagnant labor market in Africa, despite the increasing level of education of its countries and citizens. Of course, we are looking at cultivating new frontiers in employability, research for skills, and career enhancement. Now, these are the conversations that, the NECA DG and these 6 countries coming in to partner we're having. Now, I believe that if we are saying that university graduates are unemployable, it falls back first to the quality of education that they are getting in schools. I know that in recent times we have tried to inculcate a little bit of skills acquisition, this other one, self-development, and the rest into the curriculum of university education, as opposed to, I came to study mass communication, I learned everything that pertains to communication, no life skills, no even with regards to these, having a structure where university undergraduates are learning how they can become employable in the very fast changing dynamics of society. Let's not forget that the way society was 20-30 years ago, or let's take it back to 40 years, where some of our parents would just graduate out of schools and there will be employment waiting for them, which matched the needs of society at the time. Let's not forget that the needs of society at this time is grossly upended with the fact that technology is having a great impact of what employability even means these days. So it's not just that a person went to school and studied a particular thing. What is your versatility level with the current trends and technological needs of your field, with what you have learned from schools? Let's be fair and let's call a spade a spade. In Nigerian institution, most of what we get is just the theoretical part of what our field entails. How many of us really had hands-on encounters or experiences with our field? Those of us that did engineering in schools, how many times did we hands-on get those things, get our hands burned with all of these things? So we are saying that the technical part of education is lacking. And let's also look at the technological upheavals that we are having. How many of our lecturers who even lecture in these schools are currently technologically savvy? So it falls back to the lack of research available for our lecturers in schools, because if these people are not improving on what they offer students, yes, we know we have some students who have gone out of the way to get themselves education, but the percentage is actually abysmally low. So how can we now improve on the impact of quality of employable youth in the country? It's just a vicious circle.
Well, I think I'll borrow the word of one of the academia that we had on, as you said, one of the days, Idi Ongebon, who is a trained teacher and lecturer, who said what Nigeria needs as far as the educational system is concerned is a complete overhaul of the system. A complete overhaul that will change the way Nigerians perceive education, that will change the way education is being given to Nigerians. Now, Nigerians joke about, drawing the anatomy, drawing, cockroaches and things from nursery to primary to secondary school. Nigerians joke about, different things that we were forced to do or we were made to do. And then they ask, how are those things applicable to your today's role in the field that you studied? And if you find out, it's almost non-existent. Now, it's about time for us to get past the ancient days modus operandi, the ancient days curriculum yeah, of having people, cram and reproduce what they crammed about, things that people said 100 million years ago that is no longer relevant to today's reality. Now, the crazy thing is that at this moment that we are seated here, if you were to take a tour or take a survey of Nigerian universities, get into the lecture notes of Nigerian lecturers, you would find people lecturing with lecture notes they graduated with 50 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. Now, if you happen to be a stubborn student who says, sir, this is outdated in line with what is happening, you become the target of all the lecturers. So you would hear students saying, I cannot speak out in class. I cannot attempt to answer questions. I cannot attempt to do anything outside of what is being given to me because the lecturer is giving you something and the lecturer expects you to reproduce that same thing. most lecturers are not looking at the changes that is happening within their environment, within their field of studies. They are buried, trapped, enslaved in the mindset of what was given to them. Now, as long as the Nigerian educational system is not overhauled, as long as we do not have a new strategy that brings together competent skills within that field and match them with the theoretical aspect that we see outside the climes of Nigeria, we are not going to have graduates, except for those who take extra steps to master and hone their skills relevant in their industry and their field of study. We are not going to have graduates who are ready for employment. And then, of course, we also have to look at the employers themselves. I mean, one of the responsibilities of organizations is to absorb people, fresh graduates, fresh people who are looking for the opportunities to prove their onions. Yes, they have the certificate, they may not have, the hands-on skills. So what happens to you employing them and then giving them the exposure, giving them the opportunity to, gain the skills?
Requisite training on the job.
On the job. Now, that also, gives the people the opportunity to learn what they could not get within the university, environment. But on the whole, if Nigeria is going to solve this problem that has been on for donkey years, the educational system needs to be overall. And of course, people who are trusted academia, people who are trusted trained teachers need to be brought in to redesign a curriculum, to redesign how things are run in the educational system. And of course, the implementation has to be followed through. Let's not also forget that the drive in this country has always been about certificate. It doesn't matter how you get that certificate, where you got that certificate from, what means you used to get the certificate. So people are just, what's your qualification? BSc? Okay, what's your qualification? I have a master's degree. I have a PhD. That's what people want to hear. But how did you get it? Did you actually sit down to study to get it? Did you earn it on merit, or you stole it, or you bought it, or you cheated your way through school to get that certificate?
Of which some of those things you are listing are part of the reasons why most people are not employable.
Exactly.
Because even if you said we went to school and had just the theory of your field, there is an extent to which you'll be able to deliver. Because if you see, if I remember that these are the, 4 W's and H of writing in communication, although I might not have written so much, but if I am given, a sheet to write now in my field, I should at least have, an idea of how to go about it. But then it brings me to the question of, we know that funding is an issue rather in the education sector, primary issue. We are not getting enough funding. We're also looking at the fact that beyond funding and giving resources for research in our schools, changing times and seasons, at least everybody now uses a smartphone. If you are a lecturer and you're still lecturing with notes of 1992 or 1983, because that's how long ago you started lecturing, what happens to comparing notes with your colleagues from other institutions globally? What's available in my field as a lecturer globally? Can I find a way to integrate this with what I'm currently teaching my students so that these people are employable? We also have this issue of, it's not my father's job. Anyhow, we do it because they have not sponsored us to this end. So there is, and again, I think the problem of Nigeria is, we need a lot of mental shift with how things are done within the country. This is a big problem. We need to start from the individual level to fix it, then go to the investments that the country is making in education. And let's also look at the part of these youth. Why are they unemployable? Is it that we are having more students study the things that they do not have the psychological strength to do in the society, or what exactly it is? So like you said, an entire overhaul is what we need in the education sector, and we really need to make sure that our graduates are competitive enough globally. Just with the whole Japa syndrome that we are having, you need to find out how many examinations people even have to write first of all before they are qualified to work in some of these nations that they are jackpotting to. So it's not even just a matter of, I got my visa, I got stamped and I'm moving. There are lots of examination, cross-examination. Some people have to stay trained on their jobs for at least a year when they go to some of these countries before they can finally become stably employed. So there's a lot to look at in this in this aspect. And it's not just, like you said earlier, it's not just a matter of, oh, let's talk, and then we keep filling the media space with a lot of talk, from which DG said what. Let's begin to see actions that, you know, are stemmed out of things that are negotiated. But of course, I like to say, let's let that particular story, let's let that particular issue to rest. I know you want to say something.
Seriously, but before we let that particular issue rest, now, as far as employment is concerned, let's not also forget, most times when people come out, they want to be employed, but they're not even armed with the right mindset. So you find a lot of people who are willing to get a pay at the end of the month, but are not willing to put in the work that will bring about the pay. So it goes back to not just the academic system, it also goes back to the kind of ethics or work ethics that people have.
When are youths, you know, and undergraduates meant to learn work ethics? I mean, the excuse can just be, I'm just a fresh graduate.
Well, as a fresh graduate, part of the things that we ought to have within the academic system, within the school environment, is work ethics. If you want people, you're training them to go get a job. So it should be inculcated into our curriculum. Our university undergrad, in fact, from the secondary school level, job ethics should be something that is a part and parcel of our learning process. So that from the onset, you already know, okay, this is how to be. A lot of people don't know how to behave in the work environment. So you find people who just want jobs, but don't know how to operate within the corporate environment. And of course, what is going to happen is unproductiveness or lack of productivity. In that instance, you know, the employers will definitely want somebody who's going to do better. And of course, we are looking at the indices. An average of 500,000 Nigerian graduates are churned out on a daily basis.
500,000 is really abysmal. We churn out a lot of graduates in this country.
Now, how much of our industries, combine the entirety of the industries in this country, how much vacancy do they have? Is it up to half of that number?
Both public on a yearly basis?
Exactly. So how are you going to be able to employ the numbers of graduates being churned out when you don't have the industries with the available opportunities for these graduates? So even if we have graduates who are competent, which of course I know at this moment, we have graduates who are competent enough, they have the requisite skill, they have the certification, they have everything, but there is no opportunity for them to work.
So we're also looking at the fact that we need more people to invest into industries and other, you know, things that can ventures that can actually get people employed. These are, you know, these are a myriad of issues. And also we would just like to, you know, put it out there too, when we also have employers of labor who say they can't take you because you do not have, you know, years of experience. You wonder where, you know, fresh graduates should be getting years of experience from. It's just a wonder in this particular country that we live in. But let's move. Niger has been on the news for at least going to 2 weeks now because of the coup that today makes it, I think, a week. Okay, that's a week since the coup was masterminded by the military, presidential military guard of President Bazoum of Niger, and there's continued to be a lot of back and forth information. Of course, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who is the ECOWAS chair, had lent a voice to the issue that is happening there. But in the course of this week, we have seen moves by different countries that have been in certain cooperations with the Niger Republic, move out support, humanitarian aids, and all the likes. But this is a strong straw that came, you know, on the back of all of these. Just yesterday, we saw the fact that junta-led Burkina Faso and Mali warned that any military intervention in Niger to restore deposed President Mohamed Bazoum would be considered a declaration of war against their two countries. Now, we also saw the warning from Niger's military-ruled neighbors come a day after West African leaders, supported by their Western partners, threatened to use force to reinstate the democratically elected Bazoum and slapped financial sanctions on the putschist. Of course, we've begun to already see a lot of sanctions being cut out there to Niger Republic. Now, in a joint statement, the government of Burkina Faso and Mali warned that any military intervention against Niger would be tantamount to a declaration of war against Burkina Faso and Mali. Now, they said the disastrous consequences of a military intervention in Niger could destabilize the entire region. Now, they are refusing to apply the illegal, illegitimate, and inhumane sanctions against the people and authorities of Niger. Of course, there was an emergency summit on Sunday where the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, demanded that Bazoum be reinstated within a week, failing which it would take all measures to restore constitutional order. Now, there's a lot of, back and forth with this particular issue. Now, first question is, why is Burkina Faso and Mali saying that, if there are moves by other African countries and even Western allies at this point to even forcibly restore Bazoum's leadership of the country, democratically elected leadership of the country, that there's going to be a problem? And we're looking at what are the underlying factors. What exactly is Burkina Faso and Mali trying to preserve, or what are they trying to guide against? Now, these are really, really big questions. And, on the sublime of this is the fact that most African countries are saying we are getting tired of Western interferences with how we decide to run, the processes of our country. Let's not even forget that now there are propositions about the fact that Niger and some parts of these conflicts are grossly backed by the Wagner Group, which is the Russian extract of, all of the invasions that we are seeing. So we are beginning to see that most African countries are having issues with the kinds of alliances that we are having with Western countries. Are we still looking at a modern day kind of colonialism happening with the people who had colonized these, enclaves in Africa before? Because, for instance, France is the colonial master of Niger Republic, and we're already seeing some of the moves that France is making. They've already said they're going to make moves to, evacuate France, citizens of France out of the country. And we also saw that the embassy was attacked. What are the underlying inferences to all of these issues happening in Niger at this time?
Well, if you're asking the underlying tone, first I'll come from the point. What is the reason behind the coups in Africa? Mali, Burkina Faso, and now Niger Republic. They're all traits and threats tied to one thing: Russia. Now, this morning I'd just like to take response. I think the Wagner Group's boss, Yevgeny Prigozhin, has hailed the coup as a move towards independence from the West. Now, when you're talking about independence from the West, if you're getting liberated from the West and you're turning to Russia, it means you're not independent. So you're just moving from one oppressor, allegedly, to another oppressor who might be worse than the former oppressor. So at this point, I don't know what the African continent wants for itself. I don't know why the Africans cannot get to think as free beings, as free-spirited beings for themselves. Because one would have expected that even they recall what I said when the coup started. If you want to change Niger Republic, if you're saying that the democratically elected president of the country was not leading in the right direction, going to take over the country, the helms of affairs, is not the way out. You were not trained to be the president of the country. You were trained as a military person. You were trained within the ranks and files of the military to protect the sovereignty of the nation. So when you move from what you were trained for and take over something that you were not prepared for, just because there are some forces underneath backing you up, you are creating a space for the people you so claim you want to save to suffer a lot more. Now, one of the things that even pointed my attention, and of course African and the world attention, to the fact that what is happening in the Niger Republic is not just ordinary, but has the backing of Russia, before the statement coming from the Wagner mercenary boss Yevgeny even came to limelight, was the fact that the protests that first happened after the coup took place, people were shouting away with France and in with Russia. So if you hear those kinds of comments, it therefore tells you these guys have done on-the-ground work and have begun to butt over the minds of the Niger Republic people to Russia. But what would this mean for Niger Republic? You're letting go France, you're letting go the West, you're turning to Russia. How safe are you going to be with Russia? And what's the guarantee that Russia is not going to be worse than, whichever country you're trying to go away from? So if we want to talk about, Africans thinking for themselves, if we want to talk about Africa's liberation, if we want to talk about independence, if we want to talk about leadership, then we should talk about moving away from whatever influence from whatever part of the country, from whatever part of the world, to just thinking for ourselves. It would be a different thing if the military coup in Niger Republic and its leaders would come out to say, yes, we are thinking for ourselves. We are not associated with, the Russia country. We are not accessible to anybody. We are just here. We are all Nigers, and we are trying to solve the problem of Niger. But I doubt in the next 100 years if they're ever going to come out to say that. And in the event that they do, it's not just going to be about them making a statement. It's also going to be about the Niger Republic, the African continent, and the world saying that these people are actually just thinking for themselves and trying to make something beautiful. But then the emphasis is taking to overthrowing a democratically elected government is illegal, is criminal, and is something that should not happen within the African continent. And if we are having military personnel do that, then we are worse than the slave masters.
You're enslaving ourselves, like we said. Is this a modern day strategy for, colonialism? But when we see Mali and Burkina Faso say that although they are embroiled in their own issues, they are going to come out to defend Niger, should there be any kinds of, Western interferences with the issues happening there, we need to see that, the proper conversations need to be held by the stakeholders within the continent of Africa to see how these will be settled. And like the big question, why are we moving from Western quote-unquote governance to European governance? Of course, the Russian enclave and the Wagner group is all in that enclave. What does this really mean for Africa at this time? And to what extent is Mali and Burkina Faso willing to go if there is these kinds of interferences? We need to be careful not to make the current crisis in Niger to even escalate, where to now see that we are reeling in numbers of lives being lost and the likes. So, like you said, negotiations and dialogues are the first way to resolve crisis. And we do hope that the people who are meant to be having the right conversations are currently having the right conversation. And like we rightly said, the military has its own responsibility, and the best form of acting as a third eye to the government should really not be a coup, because at the end of the day, history has shown us in the continent of Africa that coups never also get it right. At the end of the day, you further plunge the country into poverty, lives are lost, and you really never need, at the board, the intention for going on the coup in the first place. But a lot is happening. Fingers crossed. Let's see how all of this will be interpreted. Hopefully soon, some respite will come to Niger and let constitutionally elected government return into power. But let's take a break right there from all of our stories this morning and get to the news brief desk where Mary Joseph will bring us tidbits of global news. When we return, there's more conversation to be had on Rise and Shine. Stay with us.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people. But there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTime's DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Every society is premised on the quality of relationships forged by its inhabitants. The health of these relationships determines how well people, relationships, organizations thrive and how long they stick together. Join Uyai Anyekan on Connect every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday 2:30 to 3 p.m. on Channel 421 on Star Times to catch all the conversations, interviews, real stories and how to navigate relationships and family life in the 21st century. Real people, real faces, real stories. Connect live on Spectrum Television.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian Police Force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian Police Force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the Matters Council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
government, Secretary General, delegates.
Voting for Spectrum TV to recover for the lapses taken into account.
A very good morning to you and welcome to your morning news brief on Spectrum, live from Uyo. I am Mary Joseph. We begin the news brief from the legislature, where the Senate President Godswill Akpabio has highlighted the need for the National Assembly to revisit the legislation behind the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN. Akpabio made the assertion during the ministerial screening at the Senate following nominees Adebayo Adebabu request for new laws instilling oversight of the Apex Bank amid recent controversial decisions that appeared to pit the Apex Bank against the other policymakers in the federal government. Away from that, the Acting Inspector General of Police, IGP Dr. Kayode Adeolu Agbetokun, has expressed deep concern regarding the impending nationwide protest announced by the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, and the Trade Union Congress, TUC. While recognizing the constitutional right to protest and the labor union's grievances, the IGP emphasized the importance of constructive dialogue in resolving the issues and appealed to the involved parties to ensure the demonstrations remain peaceful and not be hijacked by miscreants. Meanwhile, the two-day meeting between the federal government and the organized labor ended in a deadlock on Tuesday, with the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress leaders vowing to begin a nationwide protest against the removal of fuel subsidy. The planned protest by the organized labor, slated for today over the fuel subsidy removal by the federal government, may shut down the country and paralyze the economy. We head straight to the judiciary now, where Justice Nicholas Owibo of the Federal High Court in Lagos has granted the suspended governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, leave to serve the Director General Department of State Services, Yusuf Bichi, the order of the court admitting him to bail and directing his remand in the custody of the Nigerian Correctional Service. Justice Owibo granted the order following an ex parte application moved by Emefiele's counsel, Ogonaya Sunuga. Recalled that Justice Owibo had ordered that Emefiele should be remanded in the Ikoyi facility of the Nigerian Correctional Service pending the perfection of the bail conditions. However, the DSS arrested him, stopping the NICOS from taking him to the Ikoyi custodial facility as ordered by the courts. We move to health now, where the Fed and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development has expressed their readiness to partner to check and control spread of the anthrax disease in the country. The partnership followed the anxiety created over the anthrax outbreak in Nigeria, with confirmed cases in Niger and Lagos states. The FAO's Nigerian Communications Officer, David Tosca, made this known in a statement made available to newsmen. We head straight to the foreign scene, where the first of 3 planes carrying mostly French and European people evacuated from Niger has landed in Paris a week after a coup toppled one of the most latest pro-Western leaders in the jihadist-plagued Sahel. Reports say that the evacuees who arrived in Paris on the French government plane this morning have said that they are relieved to have left Niger after days of unrest. And finally, in sports, World Football Body FIFA has announced its plan to pay prize money directly into the players' accounts of the winners of the ongoing Women's World Cup in Australia and New Zealand. FIFA Secretary General Fatman Samora confirmed this in a viral video on social media, saying that the policy change is due to unpaid allowance issues involving Nigerian Super Falcons. Recall that the Falcons head coach Randy Waldrum had earlier revealed that some players were owed per diem and bonuses from 2 years ago. We'll have details of this and more in our news at 12. I am Mary Joseph. Let's get back to Rise and Channel, where we have Francis and Oyai on standby. Do have a wonderful morning.
As of state and government, Secretary General, delegates.
Voting for Spectrum TV to recover for the lapses taken into account.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people. But there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTime's DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Every society is premised on the quality of relationships forged by its inhabitants. The health of these relationships determines how well people, relationships, organizations thrive and how long they stick together. Join Uyai Anyekan on Connect every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday 2:30 to 3 p.m. on Channel 421 on Star Times to catch all the conversations, interviews, real stories on how to navigate relationships and family life in the 21st century. Real people, real faces, real stories. Connect live on Spectrum Television.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the Matters Council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Welcome back. This is Rise and Shine. Of course, we like to always take you around what is happening in Nigeria. Today is heated up as the country is waking up to the NLC protest gathering. And of course, on Twitter, just the NLC subsidy protest seems to be the leading trend today, the most talked about. Nigerians are taking to the street to protest the fuel subsidy removal and, of course, calling on the federal government led by Ahmed Bola Tinubu to do the needful of addressing the immediate concerns. We've also touched light on the issue in Niger Republic, where the other military juntas within the region have also said they are going to support the military coups in Niger, and in the event that ECOWAS pushes out his force. Recall the ECOWAS chairman, Ahmed Bola Tinubu, had issued one-week ultimatum for the military junta in Niger to restore the democratically elected President Bazoum or face other measures that would be, rolled out by the organization. Of course, this morning also talked about the accident in Lagos State and the fact that emergency responders were able to remedy the scenario. And of course, it raises a lot of questions as to why the crash will even happen in the first place and call for a probe. But right about now, we will be moving in to bring you the headlines across the national dailies. Of course, heading out to the Delhi newspapers.
Of course, on Daily Spotlight this morning, let's take a quick swipe at the Punch. Big stories this morning. Subsidy talks, of course. Labour shuns federal government, begins protest as oil workers down tools. How federal government, NLC meeting deadlock. Labour, PDP berates Tinubu's proposed pay rise. We also see here IG orders AIG's CPs to maintain order, prevent violence. Falana says protest lawful. So from what we see and hear right now from the front page of the Punch, we're expecting that protest crowds are going to be gathering across the nation. We also see here Tinubu sends second ministerial list today, making it of course, details are on page 29. More to come. We also see here direct interventions in power sector hit 7 trillion naira, says federal government. Page 19 is where you can find the details. Niger, Russia, Burkina Faso, Mali oppose ECOWAS military intervention. Okay. Of course, we are seeing the very strong supports there of Russia to the coup happening in Niger. Questions will still arise. Page 29 is where you can find details. Federal government orders probe as test flight plane crashes on Lagos Road. We also see here 500 illegal courier operators under persecution, says Post. Task force officials extort 35,000 from motorists on Lagos Ibadan Expressway, page 4. We also see here foreign trained doctors. Mass failure worsens Nigeria's manpower crisis. Page 3 is where you can find details, and that's all we have on the front page of the Punch.
Next up is the Vanguard newspaper. On the front page of the Vanguard this morning, the kicker says NLC insists on protest as talks fail. The writer says IGP warns against violent protests. Federal government begs Labour to suspend protests. Labour says palliatives not enough to cushion hardship. To brief organs and government plea to suspend protests. Ajaro absent at meeting TUC civil society allies direct members to participate in protests. It's police constitutional duty to protect Nigerians. NLC, that is on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. We also have 4 persons rescued as plane crash in Lagos State. That's on page 7. Benue announces 15,000 100,000 allowances for core members, doctors. That's on page 13. Subsidy, lift ban on fuel supply to border communities, Senate tells federal government. Those stories are on page 9 and 13 respectively. Of course, still on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper, court grants Emefiele leave to serve DSS DG order transferring him to prison after bail. That's on page 9. Tinubu court reserved judgment on Atiku Obi's petitions. On page 4 is where you can find the story. Of course, the last Senate screens El-Rufai Umwahi Edun Adelabu orders. That's on page 27. And of course, junta-led Burkina Faso, Mali warns against military intervention in Niger Republic. That's on page 22. Those are the major stories you find on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper.
Moving from the Vanguard, let's look at what this day is saying this morning. Of course, NLC TUC adamant to reject Tinubu's palliatives, saying no reason to call off protest. Declare President silent on wage award, fixing of refineries. Hundreds protest in Kano over fuel price hike. Others, no room for violent protests, IGP warns. NLC. We also see here orders tight security nationwide. Another story here says Trump charged with efforts to overturn his 2020 presidential election. Administerial screening, Wale Edun says Naira fair value is 700 Naira per $1. Also hints on measures to boost economic recovery. Says Office of Accountant General of Federal Government should be created. Justifies plan to distribute $800 million cash to vulnerable Nigerians. We also see here El-Rufai, 1.6 trillion naira subsidy on electricity not sustainable once discourse taken away from banks management. Okay, so we're also seeing push there to take away subsidy from electricity all at the same time. God help Nigeria. We also see here tribunal reserves judgment in Atiku Obi's petitions against Tinubu. Atiku Obi, Dati, Adichie, others storm court at final address proceedings. Burkina Faso, Mali declares support for Niger military junta, say invasion tantamounts to declaration of war. Of course, there's a picture story there of Atiku at the tribunal. And that's all the stories that we have on the front page of this day newspaper.
Next up is the Nation newspaper. The kicker there says IG warns against violence as Labour insists on protests. And NLC seeks security cover for protesters. This is the front page of the Nation newspaper. Page number 25 has the story. And there is a picture story of the jet crash in Ikeja Major Road. Still on the front page of the Nation, President defied 2 weeks sit at home, calling Southeast. That's on page 4. Tribunal reserved judgment in Atiku Obi's petition, still on page 4. Senate to revisit CBN Act, says Akpabio. That's on page 2. Those are the major stories you'll find on the front page of the Nation newspaper. And to wrap it up, Emefiele gets courts not to serve bail order on DS Hez. That's the major stories on the front page of the Nation newspaper.
Moving from the Nation, let's look at our very next paper this morning, and that will be Nigerian Tribune to wrap up our newspaper review this morning. Big story, IGP talks tough as NLC TUC gear up for protest. We also see here again, government moves to avert protest. Labour says no going back. Protest commences 7:30 a.m. And today nationwide, of course, we are already several minutes into the protest nationwide this morning. Lagos transporters won't join, says MC Olumo. Okay, page 5 is where we can find details of that particular story. MC Olumo is still speaking loud under this administration. Military can't handle Nigerian problem. Agbaje and political sciences say, of course, Nigeria must take caution on the Niger Republic's matter. Ayobode, we hope democracy will be established without military intervention. UK Foreign Secretary, page 2 and 19, is where you can find details. We also see the fact that Nigerians raise posers over Tinubu's relief package. They say wants reduction in food prices. Speech commendable, in tune with our request, says Man. We also see here make importation of electric cars duty free, says Ekechukwu. Page 10 is where you can find all of those stories. We also see here PEPC reserves judgment in Atiku Obi's case, page 10. Freed Ondo kidnap victims. Our abductors collected 2.2 million naira ransom, rice and cigarettes. Page 23 is where you can find details. Lift ban on fuel supply to border communities. Senate tells federal government. Page 13. The question of if that's a right move at this time, it will be on the table. We also see here Senate screens El Rufai, Edun, Adelabu, Musawa, Dangiwa, others. Uproar over petition against former Kaduna governor. FX rates should settle at 700 naira to $1 as government eyes foreign equity investment, says Edun. Of course, he made that statement during his screening yesterday. There's a picture story there of aircraft crash landing on road in Ikeja. 2 rescued. Investigation commences. And those are all the stories that we have on the front pages of our national dailies this morning. Striking, of course, the fact that 7:30 a.m. this morning is when the protest started nationwide. And we also see the IGP of police, Egbetokun, saying that police have been instructed to make sure that law and order is maintained nationwide, even as NLC leads Nigerians out on the streets to peacefully protest the upturn of things in Nigeria at this time.
Well, it's a very beautiful thing at this point to hear that the NLC is standing its ground. Nigerians are standing their grounds, and the protest is currently ongoing across the different states of the Federation. But I love the comment coming from the leadership of the NLC that it is the duty of the Nigerian police force to protect the Nigerian citizens. And that, of course, goes to remind the IGP or the acting IGP that it's not about him speaking on, advising that the protest does not get hijacked, but also it is within his, is within his role to ensure that men of the Nigerian police force are positioned in a way that criminal elements do not go into, the crowd of Nigerians and then, of course, hijack the peaceful protest for any reason. So we do hope that the IGP will, adhere strictly to the provisions and the role of the Nigerian police, which of course is providing security for the Nigerian populace, and then ensure that the protest happens peacefully. Fair enough, at the end of the day, maybe we'll get to hear Ahmed Bola Tinubu's led federal government react in favor of the Nigerian people, and then we can put to rest this protest, which of course could have been avoided in the first place if the leadership of Ahmed Bola Tinubu had met with the NLC and the TUC members, and of course the negotiation table had been fruitful at this point.
Well, that's a lot of, hopes, which is literally what the Buhari-led... which is what the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration is, actually promising renewed hope. But most of it, there are on promissory notes. And Nigerians are saying we want to see action. Remember that in the speech that the president gave two nights ago, he had actually said the fact that the 500 billion naira palliative still stands, and the 8,000 disbursement of palliative is what they're going to still continue to do. Part of why NLC, TUC are on the streets nationwide this morning. Of course, would also like to encourage you from whatever part of the country you are watching us this morning, please fill us in with what the protest is like on your end. Of course, we have our phone lines that will be displayed on the screen, and you can also reach us via our social media platforms, all of which you can find at spectrumtv.ng. Let's get intels. We do hope that this peaceful protest will not be hijacked in any part of the country. But then again, Spectrum Television is keen on hearing what you think about these issues that are happening. Do you really think that this protest, as driven by the NLC on behalf of Nigerians this morning, will be able to get us any hearing room with the leadership of Nigeria today? Of course, please do take advantage of our phone lines, take advantage of our website, and let's get your feelers nationwide this morning. But that's the much we can take on the front pages of our national dailies. We'll take a quick break, and when we return, we'll be joined by our guests to x-ray, of course, some of the issues happening around the nation this morning. To stay with us.
Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president and stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the matters council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but you can't be talking about cases which are in court,
Is
my lord.
this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Rise and Shine, and we're coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. Of course, Rise and Shine is our breakfast show brought to you by Spectrum Television. We've already talked about certain strong issues happening in Nigeria and also even in Africa, of course, having looked at the crisis and coup that happened last week, Wednesday, in Niger Republic. A lot is happening. Questions are being asked. This Niger Republic coup, how does it affect the rest of Africa, and how does it affect Nigeria in the face of current day realities? Of course, we are being joined with our guest this morning, Mr. Marvel Essien, to look at certain issues happening all around the country this morning. As of 7:30 a.m. this morning, NLC upended the truce by the federal government and hit the streets to protest the high cost of living, protest the fuel price hike in the country, and other benefits they've been asking the federal government to bring to bear to cushion the effect of the subsidy removal. So as we speak, numbers are rising on the streets nationwide, and these are some of the issues we want to look at this morning, talking to Marvel Essien. Of course, he's a human resource and organization development consultant. Good morning, Marvel Essien. Good to have you on the show.
Good morning, Oyai. Good morning.
How is the city of Port Harcourt this morning? Are the numbers already rising outside?
I can hear you.
Okay, yes, I can also hear you absolutely clear. I'm asking, how is Port Harcourt this morning? Are the protest numbers rising outside already?
Yeah, talking about the NLC strike.
Yes.
Yes, that the labor union, the Nigerian Labor Union, they are already on the streets this morning. They have fulfilled their promise that they are going to embark on a protest. Whether we call it a protest or we call it a strike, and a labor action has been taken, and of course, it is so legal that they take this action. However, the impact on the country is what we need to discuss in a conversation to see whether they should actually have embarked on this strike or not.
That's a very big question that we have this morning for you, Marvel. And I like that you already took a cue to it, because one thing is to hit the streets with placards asking questions. But my big question always remains, to what end can protests nationwide gain us any, ambience with the federal government at this time?
The reality that we have on ground. The reality that we have on ground is that the President, His Excellency President Tinubu, had taken bold steps in some economic directions. And as it is presently, the main issue in Nigeria is about the fuel subsidy. It is also about the foreign exchange, harmonization of the foreign exchange. Now, these two major policy decisions has impacted so much on the economy of Nigeria. We are yet to see the effect of the increase in VAT. Labour is also discussing the school fee.
We do hope that network will not be part of our problems this morning. Of course, Marvel Lesian is saying we need to really look into the fact what impact is this protest really going to have on Nigeria and Nigerians at this time. Of course, he was enumerating some of the issues for which Nigerians are found on the streets this morning. Please, Marvel, do go ahead with your thoughts.
Yes, the labor people, the labor union, they have talked about the subsidy removal. They have talked about the harmonization of the value of the naira and all this, VAT and school fees. But the main issue that is ringing on the streets of Nigeria is the fuel subsidy removal. And the question is, does the federal government really have an option of not removing the subsidy, and what impact it may have to make on the country? So of course, we know people are saying that palliatives should have been put in place. And if we have these palliatives in place before you increase or you remove fuel subsidy, which impact on the fuel price increase, that Nigeria would have paid better economically. But you see, this has been going on for a long time. And of course, from the president's address to the nation, he has talked about his promises about palliatives and the actions he has taken so far. But labor people are not satisfied with these explanations that he has made. Because to labor, I think they are really looking at how their salaries, how their wages, how their allowances can be increased to mitigate the effect of this high cost of fuel that is impacting on high cost of transportation and so on, that we are having so much economic stress in Nigeria already. The reality is that the economic situation in Nigeria is quite bad, and it is expected. It has been expected. Nigeria had been living in borrowed times, and now speak the federal government dilemma of whether to continue with the subsidy or whether to insist on going on with the subsidy. And of course, we know the impact that this may make. The National Assembly is also pleading with the labor union to pipe down on the strike action and to see how they can dialogue, to see how they can mitigate the effect of this fuel subsidy. So many other, the civil society of the northern parts, they have said that they don't want to partake. They're withdrawing. The civil society in the north, they are withdrawing from the strike. But the labor union in itself, they are continuing, they are going on with this strike action. the effect of this strike action, I think, would impact so negatively on the nation if the labor insists to run this for more than 24 hours.
There is no promise so far if they are going to run this for more than 24 hours. But when we look at the fact that civil society organizations in the north have decided to withdraw from this, since they have decided to withdraw from this particular protest, what does this mean to you? Because we also have the conversation of, is NLC really doing this for Nigerians, or they are doing it for their own stomach? Now, when we have a division even in the House at this time, where some people are saying we are going to protest and some others are saying we are not going to protest, how then are we going to, come to a common ground where we achieve in the face of the federal government?
Yes, when we look at these things, the reality of it is that if NLC, they are in dialogue with the federal government, if NLC had been in this country since 2012, when this fuel subsidy issue was at its height, then NLC should know the constraints or the situation of the federal government as it stands currently. So if some pundits feel that they're doing this for their own interest, I may agree with them that they would be doing it in their own interest, because it's absolutely clear that everybody should understand the situation that we are now and support the federal government to see what palliative they can put in place. We are talking about how to generate more foreign exchange for the country. We are talking about how to create employment for the citizens of the country to mitigate the effect of this high cost of living, of this economic situation that we are experiencing today. People with their own experience, from their own knowledge, feel that they should go on strike and force the local government and the federal government to they are doing for the interest of the country, but for their own interests.
For their own interest. That's a major concern at this time. But of course, we'll have to wait and see, how this particular protest spirals today. Of course, we're also expecting that the protest for those state governments, for those states rather, that have decided to join in the protest, that it is not hijacked at any point. But like you said, there is no real-time way to measure what the impact is going to be. But let's also look at another concern this morning. You are a human resource expert and also an organizational development expert. Let's look at the fact that NECA is saying that we do not have employable youths out of Nigerian universities. A number of factors are enumerated. The failing system in our education sector. We're also looking at the fact that poor funding in that sector is also part of the reasons. But primarily, they mentioned the fact that lack of industries in the country is why we do not have a lot of employable room for graduates being churned out of our universities. As a human resource expert, from your perspective, why is it that this particular conversation is now trading graduates from Nigerian universities?
Yes, NECA, they are just stating the obvious, the situation in the country and the reality in the country. And for clarity, NECA in that discussion raised three major issues. They talked about the depleting nature of industries in Nigeria, that is reduced in the numbers of industries in Nigeria. Of course, those things are impacted by the current economic reality in Nigeria. Secondly, they talked about the educational standard, the educational system that we are running, the curriculum that we are running in Nigeria. Thirdly, they talked about the employable value of the graduates that Nigeria is churning out into the labor market. Those three issues are issues that Nigerians should be very, very familiar with. Because, of course, we know that we are not doing much to improve on our manufacturing sector. We are not doing much in productivity by creating from the small scale to medium scale to large scale industry. We are not doing enough. We are not doing much in that direction. We have Bank of Industry in Nigeria. How well are we utilizing the facility that should have been coming from this Bank of Industry? would have to do with our training, with our education system. How well we can do in these areas would actually depend on how employers.
Network is getting in the way, of course. We are looking at the impact of the rejigging we can do within these sectors, the education sector, depleting industries within Nigeria. Why exactly are industries even depleting in the country? We've mentioned some of the factors that are influencing even the NLC strike this morning, which also the rate of forex in the country is a major issue, which is affecting the depletion that we are seeing with regards to industry. Marvel, you were enumerating some issues to us before the network cut you off. Please go ahead.
Yes, I have already mentioned about the issues raised by NECA relating to this situation that we have, that graduates are not employable, that the education system is not turning out graduates that have the required skill, that have the entrepreneurial knowledge. And I also mentioned the main issue they talked about the depleting numbers of industries in Nigeria. Levels that we have to get raw materials, and most of these raw materials that we have in this country are imported from foreign countries.
The burden of fixing this
to import raw materials.
The burden of fixing this issue, as raised by NECA, like you said, is an obvious statement. The burden of fixing this issue, where do you think that the onus lies? Does it lie on the federal government? Does it lie on NECA as a body that looks at employability and employment in the country? Who really needs to look into fixing this issue? Or then again, is the problem, on the path of the youth who are not, going through the requisite training to be employable? Where does this problem necessarily stem from, and how can we fix it?
On a lighter note, NECA had already said during that discussion that the only thing that is thriving very well in Nigeria and very successfully well in Nigeria is corruption.
We can add politics to that.
That is what NECA said. But of course, NECA also made suggestions. They talked about the dual education system. What they mean is, when you are in school, you can also be working as you are schooling, like what is obtainable in France, in Canada, and some other developed countries. That people are in school and they are also working. So during that time, they are training them in a certain curricula that has to do with theories and all that in school, and they are also having the practical exposure as they are in school. I remember those days that we were in school, there used to be something we call PPA, Practical Productivity Activity. We would go for 2 months practical productivity activity and come back to school, during the holidays. Some people used to have vacation jobs and so on. That would help us to know.
Of course, still looking at how we can get this particular issue sorted. We talked about the fact that we need to see how we can gain a balance between learning theory and the practical ends of education in our country. Of course, we see that most times we just get the theory, but what happens to the practical ends that make the youth employable? Marvel, please go ahead with the things you were saying this morning.
Yes, I think you are reiterating what I am saying about the employability of the graduate.
Exactly.
Yes, we talked about the curriculum, the kind of curriculum system that we are using in Nigeria.
Big question, big issue. Marvel, as a human resource expert, we must agree to the fact that the curriculum that we are running in most of our universities as of now have become absolutely obsolete, because those were the things that your generation of people were taught. But technology is changing how education should be done. Technology is also changing the focus of every field now, but this is not reflecting in what our students are learning in higher.
I agree with NECA. When NECA talked about introducing curriculum such as entrepreneurship in schools, such as financial management in schools, business financial management, in schools. these are things that could be introduced that people will see the real life situation in school. You know, in some business schools, you don't have people coming to teach theories. You have schools that they have MDs of companies coming to teach theories. When we talk about skill development in Nigeria, it is quite challenging. Even in Akwa Ibom State here, when we talk about skill development, you see the approach is not so encouraging. I wish I had more time to discuss as an expert in skill development, as an expert in talent hunt. I will tell you that there are challenges when there is a dysfunction between the people running the administration and thinking that they are developing skills and what the actual skill development should be. So in the education system, our secondary school, universities is not giving us that. They are not giving us that. The government functionaries are not also understanding what skill development. We sing discordant tunes when we talk about what education system to develop. Sometimes we hear people talk about education development in Nigeria in very expert and sound manner. But when it comes to the implementation, you find something very different. That's the challenge we are having in Nigeria. That's the challenge we are having in Akwa Ibom State when it comes to skill development. And it is a very serious issue.
Still speaking about, developing the practical end of these issues, I will piggyback on the president's speech from 2 nights ago, and he highlighted some issues, especially with regards to making funds available for MSMEs, amounts of loans that are going to be given to people so that we can, generate more funds collectively as a country. Remember that NEC has cited the fact that industries are depleting in the nation. Now, if we look at some of the numbers that were reeled out by the president to be given as grants and loans for people to improve on their business enterprises, do you think that this will become possible and give us any kind of success rate, so that we know that when we churn out over 500,000 graduates from the universities, we have businesses every year demanding for their expertise?
You see, the president in his the last speech he made on Monday consists of these SMEs, manufacturing sector and all that, development of these sectors, and the kind of loan and the kind of money he wants to allocate to these areas. But you see, that is where we come back to the idea of corruption. When you have these nice policies, we have this thing. Do we have good value system to be able to run this system in a manner that is devoid of corruption, such that if you want to allocate loan to people, you match it with the skill of the people to ensure that this loan will be well utilized. To be sure that this loan goes to the right people. Those are concerns that may be raised. But if the federal government does what they need to do and identify businesses to assist them with this loan, of course it would impact tremendously. The multiplier effect on the economy of Nigeria would be something we would all smile.
Do you also business climate and environment in the country that does not support for these MSMEs to thrive? We are seeing people asking, for instance, this morning, we are seeing that those who import cars are asking that bills should be taken off importation of electric cars into the country. Are we not also seeing the fact that certain rules and regulations and policies will still fight these things even if loans and grants are given?
Yes, even if the loans and grants are given, I don't think, when you talk about environment, maybe you also include infrastructures, available infrastructures, especially power, especially electric power, how it would impact on it. And I don't think I heard you very well, but when you talk about environment, maybe the infrastructure comes to play, the policies that we have, how supportive are these policies to the businesses are in Nigeria.
Okay, Marvel ACN was joining us in New York here virtually this morning to look at some of the issues that are burning. Of course, 7:30 a.m. this morning, NLC led some Nigerians out to protest on the streets as a result of fuel price hike and also, some of the effects of subsidy removal. We also had NECA raising an alarm yesterday over the unemployability of youths churned out from Nigerian universities as a result of and also the effects of depleting industries in the country. These are some of the things we've been talking to Marvel Essien, who is a human resource. Give us your final thoughts, if you have any, on any of these issues of social relevance that we've talked about this morning.
The NLC strike, for instance, shouldn't be. I don't think NLC should embark on strike at this time, drag the government in this manner, even though the president himself was an advocate of sustaining subsidy, even though he denied recently that he is always supporting subsidy removal. But whatever it is, I do not think that NLC should embark on this strike at this moment for the sake of the economy of Nigeria. And of course, regarding the issue about NECA's discussion, my thoughts are that employable youth. It's already impacting so much on our productivity. I wish we had more time. I would have shown you examples even in this Akwa Ibom state, where you see this from a
Major issues. Of course, we decry the fact that we do not have ample time to take on all of these conversations. But of course,